Hey guys, it's Jake, and today we're checking out the Soldano SLO-100 suite by Neural DSP. So by now, Neural's made a name for themselves in the contemporary market of guitar plugins. They got their start making amps and plugins a couple years ago, I believe 2018, and ever since then they've been making high-quality digital versions of high-end amps so that anyone with an audio interface on a laptop can have access to these great tones. And the most recent suite is the Soldano SLO-100. Soldano amps started back in the 80s, and the SLO-100 was their flagship amp. They were handmade in very small batches in California, and tons of studio musicians wanted them. And in many ways, this amp led to the advent of things like the 5150 and the Mesa Boogie Dual Rectifier. It's kind of one of the original high-gain amp heads. Recently, the SLO-100 has become more widely available, but the cost of one is still pretty steep. The amp itself sits at around $4,000 to purchase brand new, which is pretty expensive. So this amp sim is for the people that want to have access to that signature Soldano sound for recording purposes, but don't necessarily have $4,000 to throw around. Like me, I don't have that kind of money. But on to the important stuff. How does this sound? Well, as you guys can hear for yourself in the demo you heard earlier, pretty good. At this point, it's kind of a given that anything that Neural makes is going to sound pretty good, and pretty close to the original amp too. I've heard side-by-side comparisons, and I've gotten to play through some of the amps that they've made models of, and I gotta say, they nail it every single time. These amp sims sound great, are super satisfying to play through, and they respond just the way you would expect a normal tube amp to. So what's included in the suite? So we have a preamp effects section which has two different boosts, one which is a proper overdrive and one which is a clean boost. A chorus pedal, which is new and hasn't been included in many of the other suites. I'm really stoked on that. And lastly, a compressor pedal. I'm super fond of compressor pedals. I use them a lot for cleans and leaves, and yeah, I just think that they're great, and I'm super happy that they decided to include one in this. What's new for this suite that hasn't been included in any of the other amp suites, as far as I know, only in the Archetype series, is an effects section. This is a pretty basic effects section. It has a pretty basic reverb and delay pedal in there. Pretty standard for the Neural stuff, but it is nice to see it included, so you can kind of get an all-in-one plugin with this. I am missing some of the features on the reverb and delay pedal that we saw in some of the Archetype series, like the Cory Wong and Gojira, which has things like modulation, tape saturation for the delay, and shimmers for the reverbs and things like that. This gets the job done, but I would have liked to see a little bit more features, especially since we've seen some really great delays and reverbs coming out of some of their other amp sims. Onto the amp itself, it is a, I want to say, 2.5 channel amp. There's an overdrive channel, which is what I'm guessing most people are here for. In addition to that, it also has a clean channel, which you can switch to crunch just to get a bit more gain, and it also has a bright switch on it, which is something I'm really stoked on, since I really like having bright switches on my clean channels just to get some nice chimey clean tones. The distortion character on this is also very distinct. It's very full and rich sounding, and has a very distinct mid-range to it that I can't quite describe, but it sounds very different from any of the other amp sims that I played with from Neural DSP. It sounds very unique and distinctive, and for that reason alone, I think it's worth the price of admission. You also have a post-amp EQ section, which is something that I really enjoy because it kind of just lets you tweak your tone without having to go outside the box, maybe give you some more pick attack, cut out some of the boxy mids, or give you some more low-end bloom, things like that. It just is really helpful when it comes to sculpting your tone. And then lastly, there's the cab section. The cab section in Neural DSP products is always super impressive, and this one's no exception, but I am missing some of the microphone selections that we've had on previous plugins, but the IRs that do come with this plugin are as always top-notch. So overall, my thoughts on this is I think that the distortion channel on this is very distinct, which is good. Neural DSP offers a bunch of different high-gain amp sims, and when you have that many to choose from, it's important for each of them to sound distinct so that there's a reason for me to choose one over the other, and a reason for me to have more than just one of them. This is a very distinct mid-range to it, and a very distinct distortion character to it, which I haven't really gotten in any of the other plugins. This one I find has a little bit less of an aggressive top end and a more warm, pronounced mid-range to it, making it good for some things outside of the realms of aggressive metal. It can still do that stuff super well, like most Neural DSP plugins can too, but this one seems to be the most versatile out of all the amp suites that they offer outside of the Archetype series. I'm really a fan of the preamp effects section. Usually these seem to be a little lacking when it comes to their standalone amps. Usually you'll get like an overdrive pedal and maybe a boost, and that's it. Here there's no shortage of great options to get whatever kind of tone you could really think of. I really like the addition of a chorus pedal, and it's something that I'm happy that they're putting in more of their plugins, since I think that choruses sound super great on cleans and leads, and even some high gain stuff. It really just helps add some flavor to the guitar tone, and I just think it's a great thing to have. And I'm super glad that they decided to put in an effects loop section for this too. My biggest issue with the Omega amps and the Fortin stuff is, even though it sounds great, they're kind of short on effects, and I really miss having things like a reverb and delay if I want to use those for leads. I'm really glad that they included that with this one, so you can kind of get all of your guitar tone in one plugin without having to go out into the DAW to get your other tones, and it's just super convenient. Overall, I think this is a really killer plugin, like everything Neural's done before, and is kind of the most distinct out of any of the high gain suites that I've seen. So even if you own one or two of the other high gain suites, I think that you should at least check this one out and see if it really does something for you that the other ones doesn't, like it did for me. You can try this out free for 2 weeks on Neural DSP's website, and yeah, you don't have an excuse. Go try it. It's there. I'll leave a link to it down in the description. Alright, that about does it for the amp sim, but before I go, I just want to take a second to thank you guys for watching this video. At the time of recording this, I have just hit 100 subscribers, which doesn't seem like a lot in the grand scheme of things, but it's a pretty big deal to me. I started this a couple of years ago from basically nothing, so it's really cool to see that a bunch of you guys seem to really dig my content, and yeah, I just thank you so much for subscribing, and I love hearing your guys' comments about what you think of my videos, if you decide to get any of the products that I'm showcasing, and yeah, it's just really cool to hear from you guys and to see this community growing a bit. Alright, so with that out of the way, I think that just about does it for me. If you like the music that you heard, I'll leave a link to my band down in the description below. I'll also leave a link to my social media down there if you want to follow me. And yeah, that about does it for me. Have a good one.